Thanks for having me.
No problem. You grew up in Blackpool with your mum, dad, and brother, and you were always a leader and you saw the game differently. But let's start off with what it was like growing up in Blackpool in your household.
Yeah, it was amazing, really. We wanted for nothing. My parents didn't have massive amounts, but they gave us everything we could possibly need. Supported us with everything we did, me and my brother. I remember back in the early days, every single football match, every single school match, my mum and dad were there watching and supporting. So, yeah, it gave me a good foundation, really, to go on and achieve what I've achieved.
And what was that first insight that you had into football? Was it through your father or brother?
Yeah, it was pretty much through my father, really. So I played for a local grassroots team, and my dad was my manager at first, which was interesting to say the least. I think I probably got treated a little bit harsher than the other players on the team, but again, really supportive. And I actually played up a year for a number of years as well, which I think helped me with my football career. And yeah, I think that was where it all started. And both my mum and dad as well were involved on the committee of the football club as well. So we were heavily consumed with football at that time.
I spoke to someone yesterday who said something very similar, that their dad was also the coach of the team. And I asked them, and I'm going to ask you the same, was that a positive or negative thing when you look back at it, that your father was the coach of the team?
I found it positive, really. I probably didn't think so at the time because, like I said, I was probably treated a little bit differently, probably treated a little bit more harshly. Probably for the reason for that was so he wasn't showing favouritism. But I think that helped, and I think that probably gave me a good mentality moving forward as well. So, yeah, at the time probably not, but now certainly, definitely.
And how long were you at that team before you decided to go ahead and go on pro trials at Liverpool, Preston, Rochdale, Blackpool, a number of clubs?
I was playing grassroots football from since I could walk all the way through to probably about 15 before I then went on a number of trials.
When you look at the career that you've had, like today, for example, that obviously you're the head coach of the amputee team, the England amputee team. What do you think when you look at grassroots? Do you think that's a good elevation for young children to go ahead and try and be the pro footballer that they all dream of being?
Yeah, absolutely. I think grassroots game gives you the love of the game. It gives you an opportunity to play with your friends, learn new skills. I think the standard of coaching at grassroots football has increased and it's really positive. Certainly from when I was a child. I know they have to go on the coaching badges now and do everything they need to do through the FA. So yeah, I think it's crucial that they get that kind of foundation in order to kick on and then into the programme if they get that opportunity.
Do you remember what trial came first out of Liverpool, Preston, Wigan, Rochdale and Blackpool?
Yeah, so the Liverpool one came first.
And what an opportunity.
Yeah, massive opportunity. It was a real good experience. And it was just at the time, you probably won't remember, but there was a Liverpool game where Bruce Grobbelaar and Steve McManaman had a bit of a scrap on the pitch. And it was literally the day after that. So they had the players in for training as well. So we caught the aftermath of that, which was, again, quite nice.
And do you remember what happened in that aftermath?
I think the players were just turning up at the training ground with the tail between their legs, really. It was interesting.
But that was the first opening you had into a pro environment, right? You were with the Liverpool Academy, one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I suppose my story in terms of football is the story of a failed footballer, if I'm being completely honest. It was all I ever wanted to do. I did go on a number of trials, but the professional game didn't work out for me. And it was really disappointing. And for years, I was really upset at the fact that it hadn't worked out for me. But with now having a coach's head on, I probably understand why. I probably lacked a little bit of pace. But what I did have is good leadership skills. So most of the teams I played for, I gravitated towards being captain of them teams. So I captained my school team, I captained my grassroots team. I was lucky enough to play for Blackpool schoolboys and Blackpool representative teams. And again, I was captain within them teams as well. So certainly my probably made up for the last couple of years.
I think we may have cut out there, Scott, but what we understood was, go on, you want to tell us again what you said, because it did cut out.
Yeah, so a great experience for me growing up. The clubs I was at, I probably lacked a little bit of pace, I would say, to make it as a professional player. Never understood that back then because I felt I would lived and breathed the game and I wanted to be a pro and I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting these opportunities. But I suppose my story is one of a failed footballer, really. And back then, I didn't get it, but now I do with a coach's head on. But what I had was really good leadership qualities. And every team I played for, I was a captain of. So that school team, Blackpool Schoolboys, I was lucky enough to represent, Blackpool representative team. And yeah, it was probably my leadership skills probably made up for the lack of technical ability and pace I probably had as a player.
Obviously, I work in the media side of the game, and a lot of people say something very similar, where if they didn't make it in trials like you didn't, the clubs can't really wait on you because there's other players that are good enough currently, rather than you may have been good enough in 2 or 3 years. Is that what the idea is, where the clubs can't wait, they can't afford to waste any time?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, when you look at academies now, they're making decisions on players, and they're saying if they're not a finished article by 16, then they're not going to get the scholarship and they're cast aside. What's to stop a player developing at 17, 18, 19, 20, and even further on than that? So I do think we lack a little bit of almost like a safety net in this country at that age. And I think for years and years, the bigger players, the more influential players are the ones who go to the academies because they influence games more and they're perceived as the best players. Whereas if you look at somewhere like Spain, the smaller technical players will get that opportunity as well. And it's a shame. I think we are changing a little bit in this country. I think it is improving, but we've still some way to go, in my opinion.
What does it take to be a good leader? I mean, obviously you had that drive and the ambition to become captain, which you were. But what makes a good leader from your eyes?
I think empathy towards the people you're leading. I like to create an environment where people are comfortable. Create where they can approach you. I'm certainly not somebody who shouts and bawls and people are frightened of. That's certainly not me. And in my opinion, what makes a good leader for me is that empathy and creating a culture where people can thrive and develop with almost no fear.
And what do you think about then those kind of coaches where they're the complete opposites, but they might still be good leaders in their own way? For example, we know Pep or Klopp or even Arteta, they're at the top of the game and they do have to ball into players sometimes. They do have to be that nasty guy that people don't want to talk to.
Yeah, there's certainly more than one way to skin a cat, and I know there's different types of leaders, and I completely appreciate that. Just my own perspective, that's not me. It's not part of my kind of personality and makeup, and I suppose I've seen a lot of coaches at the time who've watched other coaches and tried to almost copy them. And for me, that doesn't work. It's about finding your own level and finding out what works for you. I'm from a teaching background as well, and that's the same in teaching as well. I think it's great to watch other teachers and observe other teachers, but try and replicate them is the wrong way to go, in my opinion. By all means, take things from them, but finding your own style, I think, is crucial.
You played amateur football until 1997 when you were able to go to university and to study sports science. At that time, you went through those trials prior to this, Liverpool, Preston, Wigan, etc. Why was the sports science degree now a feasible option? What did you want to achieve out of that degree?
I suppose at that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do because I had my heart set on being a player. I'd never really thought about anything else. So sport, something to do with sport made sense to me. It was in the field that I absolutely loved. So I decided to go to university and study to be a sports scientist or study for a sports scientist degree. That was the making of me, I think. I had an amazing time doing my degree, met some incredible people and got some fantastic opportunities. And probably then was the first time that I thought, you know what, it ain't going to happen for me, the professional game, but maybe the coaching route is the route that I'd like to take and move forward with. I suppose I always felt differently to other players who had much more ability than me, but I felt as though I had a good knowledge of the game. I felt as though I looked at the game differently to other people, almost like it with an analytical brain. And I think that's obviously helped me with my coaching. In 1999, while I was at university, I got the opportunity to go over to America and coach. So I coached over there for 2 or 3 months. Brilliant experience. Coached kids from really young all the way through to college teams, very successful college teams, and that was almost like a switch for me. That was when I thought, you know what, I want to do something with working with children or working with players and trying to develop them further. So on my return from university, I then decided to sign up once my degree had finished for a PGCE, for a teaching degree, secondary teaching. But almost run two things alongside. So I had my teaching, which was almost like my bread and butter in my career, and then my coaching, which kind of ran alongside it. So I started on my coaching badge journey then as well.
So, although the sports science didn't really come into play in terms of what you do now, that was an eye opener. The opportunities that they gave you on that course, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you look at a sports science degree, it encompasses quite a lot of things. You're looking at sports history, sports coaching, strength and conditioning, lots and lots of different things from the sporting industry. So it gave me the opportunity to try different things. And I suppose as I moved through that course, I started to unpick in my brain what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I wanted to follow for a career.
Even though the home of football is England, America also gives quite good opportunities to those people like yourself who want to go out there, coach, and start a bit of a career out there. And a lot of people that I've spoken to have stopped there along their way of their journey. In the MLS, you were working for the MLS, I'm presuming. What was those facilities like for these young children coming through?
Incredible. I think what they lacked in kind of ability, the players, it was kind of an upcoming sport, really, when I was out there in 1999. In fact, the women's game was far superseded the men's game at that time. So when I had the opportunity to coach the women's teams, they were far more technical, and that was a real joy to do. But the facilities out there are just absolutely second to none, particularly at the colleges. I mean, one of the colleges that I taught at, I think there was 11,000 people there watching one of the games, and this is a college team. It's just madness.
But why? Why 11,000 people? Because if we had that in England, there wouldn't probably even be 100. So why was 11,000 people making their way over to a ground to see a college team play football?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the biggest thing with America, because America's so vast, like in our country, if we were to support a team, we could quite easily travel all over the country and watch every team in the country if we wanted to. Whereas in America, it'd be flights, it would be very expensive. So because of that, I think what these people do, these supporters do, is go and support the college teams because they're accessible and local. So I think that's the reason why they attract so much attention.
That first insight that you had into coaching would have been maybe a bit of a shortcut to what people are used to. I mean, going over to America, the MLS, that's the equivalent of a Premier League or a championship on the first time of asking when you're studying sports science. What did you learn? What was the first few things that you started to learn? And what was the first moments like stepping foot on that pitch as a coach?
Amazing. Daunting, I'd say, at first. I travelled over to America on my own. I'd never been away before on my own. We were given a hire car, so it's there you go, there's the keys, go and drive in that direction 9 hours. So that was daunting as well. But as soon as I arrived at our kind of base, I was put in touch with 2 or 3 people who are now real good friends of mine, and we just kind of flourished from there. Really, it was more of a team than individual coaching, being honest. And yeah, it was just like I said, it was just like a switch for me that this is what I want to do. This is what I enjoy. I love it. I can put the skills I've learned over the years. Yeah, I'm not a professional, which I wanted to do as a player, but it's something I could do and get equal joy from, really.
And that's what you think. You think that if you're a player or if you're a coach, you don't miss out on anything from the coach's perspective.
No, I mean, it's nothing like playing. Nothing kind of fills that void, I suppose. But I do get satisfaction from coaching. I really enjoy it. I enjoy working with younger players and developing them. And I think that's been a change with me in the last 2 or 3 years, because throughout my coaching career, my remit has been developing young footballers. And I almost didn't see myself as a coach. I saw myself as a football teacher. And then obviously, since I've become head coach of the England team, it's about winning football matches. Yes, it's about developing players still, but the switch to winning football matches is a big one. And I'm still learning that as well. And I've got a long way to go, I suppose, until I want to be where I want to be. So it's interesting.
For the MLS coaching side of things, what was their end goal across the summer? Was it just to play football, get out there and have a bit of fun, or was there an ambition behind it?
Yeah, a couple of things really. So a lot of the camps we did were literally summer camps where parents send the children to there just to keep them occupied, I suppose. And then within that kind of group, so you might have 60, 70 footballers. So they were kind of divvied up into elite players, middle road players, development players. So I started off with the development groups because I was quite new to it. And then quite quickly, I went through to the elite players. So a lot of fun. They were there to have fun, but if we kind of saw players we thought, you know what, these can kick on, then we'd speak to the local teams and get them involved at a higher level. As the kind of summer progressed, we then went off to, like I said, to do coach college teams, also coach the coaches as well, helping the coaches with development as well, which sounds crazy because I was new to coaching as well, but I got a lot from that, and my development went quite quick over that summer, if I'm being honest.
What is the difference between coaching children and adults? There must be quite a big difference where I completely understand your joy behind developing the players and molding them into who you would prefer them to be in terms of that ideal player. But also with the players that have gone through that stages, those adults that are now expecting to win games and it's a lot more serious. What do you firstly prefer? But secondly, what is the difference?
It's difficult to choose one I prefer, to be honest, because they're both very different. There's a lot of joy in taking a player and then really working hard with them and then them getting a scholarship or going on to play professional football, which I've had before, which is really pleasing. And then you've got the other side where you are coaching either professional players or you're coaching elite players, where it's more about the tactical side of the game. So you're looking at opposition, you're doing a bit of analysis on opposition, then you're working out what you've got and how to nullify what they've got. So, yeah, very different, but I enjoy them both, and it would be difficult for me to choose one or the other, being honest.
It was a bit of an eye-opener then, because immediately you came back to the UK and decided to study being a PE teacher. What did that course teach you? Because, again, you wanted to be a PE teacher, but specifically in football, I'm presuming. Obviously, in a curriculum, you can't just choose to be doing football. So maybe when cricket was an option, you were thinking, why do I have to do this, right?
Yeah, 100%. I enjoy teaching the other sports as well. I mean, you asked before what makes a good leader, and one of the things I should have said there probably is communication skills. Absolutely massive, whether that's verbal or anything else. Communication's huge, and teaching other sports gives you that. So it doesn't matter what you're teaching, what area. I've been in history classrooms. I've taught all sorts of different things, but essentially that communication's important. So regardless of the topic area, communications is communication, and I just felt as though the football and the teaching almost married together quite well. And the more I was developing as a teacher, the better coach I was becoming. And the better coach I was becoming, the better teacher I was becoming. So it really lent itself to both. It was PE because I loved it. It was always going to PE. I don't think I'd go and teach full-time any other subject. But yeah, it was a real good time in my life and gave me a real good foundation to go on and achieve what I've achieved.
And I'm presuming it was about a year or two later, is it when you started to go into the Catholic school, the secondary school in Blackpool?
Yeah.
So
I actually did my teaching practice at that school. So as part of my PGCE, you do 2 teaching practice, and it was at that school. And the moment I'd finished that placement, I was offered a job as a PE teacher there, which was great. I knew the kids, I knew the school, and it was just a great first post for me as a teacher, really.
Would you have expected to continue being a teacher? I'm guessing you wouldn't be expected to be where you are today.
Would I expect you to continue to be a teacher for long term?
Yes.
Yeah, I loved it. And I know a lot of teachers now say they don't like the profession and it's more bogged down with paperwork, and it is to a certain degree. But I loved my time as a teacher. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was incredible. Met some amazing people and learnt a lot about myself and about others. And yeah, it was a real good time.
A year later, you were approached by Blackburn to run a satellite centre. But what is a satellite centre?
Yeah, so at the time, if clubs could only take players that lived within a certain vicinity. So to kind of get around that, what clubs started to do is open satellite centres further afield. And then obviously it was in the vicinity of that satellite centre. So it was a way of kind of casting the net a little bit wider. While I was teaching, I obviously got the opportunity to see lots and lots of young players. I took the school football teams and so on and so forth. So I was approached by them to say, listen, will you open a centre and you can go out and scout the players, bring the players in. We'll give you some players too. And then if you feel as though they're any good, you can then guide them towards Blackburn's academy. And we were lucky enough to get 5 or 6 players in quite a short period of time signed at the academy, which was brilliant, a great achievement. And again, another real learning experience for me. It gave me the opportunity to go out and watch these young footballers and start to understand what the club wanted, what made a good player. They had a kind of philosophy at the time of run, touch, learn, play. And if they tick 3 or 4 of them boxes, then bring them in and let's give them a trial at the academy. So, yeah, real eye opener for me, and my first introduction really into academy football properly.
What do you personally look for in a young player? Is it the speed? Is it the strength? Because obviously that would develop over time, or is it just the technical ability?
Technical ability for me all day long. Can they affect the game with their technical ability? Don't look at strength and size at this stage. I don't think that's the right thing. I probably would have done back then, if I'm being completely honest. But now I certainly just look at that technical ability, desire, and yeah, that's massive. You can work on everything else can be worked on, but yeah.
I mean, that's the same with players like Dali Ali and Jesse Lingard, where they've kind of fallen out of touch in the last few years. But it is true where they had the technical ability like you were looking for, but they didn't have the desire to keep continuing on. I mean, is that something that you, now in the profession of football, have you seen that a lot more commonly where the players are really, really good, but they drop off because of their ambition and desire?
Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. And that also works the other way as well. Players who haven't maybe got that technical ability, but have got the drive and have got the desire, and they end up making it. So it can work both ways as well.
So after 12 months, you were coaching in the academy. What was that like, a year into what you were doing? And how did the academy start to develop over time? Because obviously you were one of the main people in this centre.
Yeah, so from the satellite centre, because we'd had some good players through, I was invited over to coach at the academy itself. And that was great because I was working with top players then, players with lots and lots of ability. So this was the point really where I was like, this is where I want to be. I want to teach elite players. I want to coach elite players and move them through to the next stage. So it was good. It was good. There was times where there was disappointments as well. So having to let players go and release players, I felt really uncomfortable doing that. I still don't like doing that. It's not something that I like doing, but it's part of the game. It has to happen. But I think the positives far outweigh the negatives at Blackburn, yeah.
So you're the one who's essentially, as bad as it sounds, making or breaking someone's career.
Yeah.
And what does that feel like? Because obviously there could be 100 players in an academy, and all of those 100 people are not getting contracts. That is the real thing. Maybe one of them or two of them may go a bit further than the others. What happens to those 98, 99 players that don't actually get to make it? What do they end up doing in the long term?
Yeah, it's difficult. What we used to do is guide them back, obviously, to the grassroots clubs. When I was at Wigan, we've had quite a lot of contacts with more lower league clubs, maybe the likes of a Crew or clubs of that ilk, and we kind of guide them towards that in the first instance. But what we try to do from the very beginning is be honest with every player. We had lots of appraisals and reviews, and during that time, you have open and honest conversation with the player and the parents as well. So when it came to the release, if we made the decision to release, it almost wasn't a shock. We didn't always get that right. Sometimes it was, and that's when you do have difficult conversations. But if you can be honest with players from the very beginning and meet with them regular and give them that appraisal, then hopefully that discussion is a little bit easier than it needs to be.
You mentioned that some things you got wrong. I mean, do you remember specific instances that you could tell us about where there was something that you got wrong and you felt quite emotionally damaged by it?
Yeah, I suppose right at the beginning, really, because I was still very young when I was in that environment. And at Wigan as well, it was exactly the same. So without a knowledge of the process of releasing a player, I think when it did become a shock, when you sat down and you're saying, right, so-and-so, unfortunately, there isn't a place here moving forward. And parents were crying and the young kid was crying. It's like, oh, this isn't me. This isn't for me. But you learn, and with experience becomes a process. And once the process is in place, that becomes easier.
2006 was a big year for you. You were promoted to become the head of the boys in the PE in the school. I mean, I don't really understand that. I mean, I'm just presuming you were head of all the lads in the school, but why was that a job? I mean, in schools today, I don't think that's actually a job, is it? Being head of a certain gender.
Yeah, so, well, obviously the girls and the lads are taught separately within secondary schools. So we had a head of girls PE and a head of boys PE. Okay. And again, I suppose that happened for me within 2 or 3 years, really. So again, it's with them leadership skills, and it's something that obviously people have seen in me throughout my life, really, where I was captain of all my teams. I gravitated quite quickly towards head of boys PE at the first appointment. So clearly, somebody saw something that thought this person could be a good leader, and I enjoy leading. I enjoy that. I feel as though I'm a good leader. I don't kind of demand. I lead from the front. I do. If I'm asking people to do stuff, I'm not afraid to do it myself as well. And I think people appreciate that and respect that. And it served me well, really, over the time.
I mean, at this point, you were also working for Blackburn when you had this experience that you were coaching in these big clubs. And then obviously you're now head of the lads in the school. What buzz did you get out of the PE that wanted you to stay at that job? Because maybe obviously there's downsides to working in Blackburn. You have to kick these kids out and tell them that essentially they're not good enough. They won't be staying with the academy. But with the boys in a school, what was the equivalent that you got out of those lads?
Again, it was just from a development point of view. As a teacher, what you want to do is you see people succeed and see people develop. And you talked before about different sports. It wasn't just football when I was teaching in the school. It was developing cricketers and developing gymnasts and developing basketballers. And it's just I do get a real buzz from that development. And even now I'll go out in Blackpool and people will call me and go, listen, I just want to thank you for the time you spent with me when we were at school. And people want to come and speak to you and talk to you about their experiences. And you've made a real small difference within people's lives. And it is a buzz, and it's what you get into it for, really.
That must be great then, getting a call from someone that you used to be able to teach, and now they're telling you how great that you were and that you guided them so far.
Yeah, 100%. And now, actually, we've got a number of people who are now teachers. So people I taught are now teachers. So probably shows me age a bit, that, Jamie.
So after you were head of the boys' school, you decided to leave work. So you had got quite far in what you wanted to do. But now you decided to leave and go travelling for 12 months. I mean, that is some commitment that you had to make. I'm guessing you were having to save up over these years with this idea to eventually go and travel the world. Talk us about that experience. Why? Before you tell us why did you decide to leave work?
Yeah, so myself and my wife at the time, she was head of PE at a school in Manchester, and I was obviously head of boys PE over in Blackpool. In the click of a finger, we'd done 5 years, and we just felt as though our life were passing us by a little bit. So we made the decision that we'd want to work abroad. So at this point, we identified as America, and we went through an application process for myself to go and coach football within a school in North Carolina, and Nicola to go and teach PE at a school in the same area. So I went through the application process, and then we decided, you know what, rather than go and work, we had spent a lot of time saving up. We felt as though, let's not work, let's just go and have as much experience as we can for the next 12 months. So we bought a round the world ticket. We both give up our jobs, which is a massive thing. At the time, we didn't have kids. But we had 2 good jobs, 2 stable jobs, and jobs we could have probably stayed in for the next 20, 30 years. But we made the decision to go and have these experiences while we were young. So we went over to South Africa, spent a bit of time over there, all around America, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia. And we just had an amazing 12 months. And again, another real pivotal point in my life, and taught me a lot, got the opportunity to see the world. And again, that probably shaped me for the rest of my life as well.
Can I just ask though, why those countries? Why did countries like South Africa and Thailand and Malaysia really stick out to you?
Yeah, so we just literally looked at a map and thought, right, where do we want to go? And then we just worked our way around. There was a real special moment as well. So we were in Bangkok. We'd spent, I don't know how long there, maybe two or 3 weeks, something like that. And then we just said, right, let's get up in the morning, go to the airport and just say, wherever's cheap. So we put our rucksacks on our bag, off we went to the airport, and within a few hours we were in the Philippines.
That is crazy. I mean, that's what I always used to get told, where that's what I want to go and do that, because you don't have a clue where you're going. If you've packed the right things to be able to go. I mean, that was obviously the cheapest option. And did you get told when you were at the airport then?
Yeah, we just said, what options have we got? This is what we've got to spend. And they said the Philippines. We said, let's go, let's do it.
What was that experience like in the Philippines?
Good, brilliant. Funnily enough, I had a friend out there I taught with many years ago, so I got in touch with him, and we ended up staying with him and his family over there, which was really nice. But yeah, just having that freedom of saying anywhere in the world that's cheap, let's go.
So when you decided to return in 2007, you were offered a sixth form PE role in Wigan. So someone was keeping obviously close eyes as to what you were doing, or you were keeping in contact. But immediately you returned, and that must be a great feeling to be able to come back and be given a job straight away without going through a process of financial insecurities.
Yeah, I was quite lucky there, really. So we came back, and we lived in the Wigan area at the time. So my wife got the job at St John Rigby College in Wigan. And I was hoping for a few weeks after we got back from travelling, with my feet up, having a bit of a chill out before I thought about work. And within a week or so, they said they needed a physiologist to go and deliver some sessions because the teacher was off sick. So I went in. 15 years later, I was still there. So yeah, that was a lucky one really for me. And if my wife hadn't got that job, I wouldn't have got that job really. So yeah, interesting.
Alongside this role that you were gaining qualifications and you completed your UEFA B license through Bolton Football Club. What's interesting to me is I couldn't tell you. I think there's UEFA A, UEFA B, UEFA C, and then there's levels. What is that process like? Because who is it? Is it Mark White from Dorking Wanderers? He often says that it's a load of rubbish, that these coaching badges are just a way to get money out of you, basically. Is that right?
There's probably certainly something in that, Jamie. I enjoyed them, to be honest. So I did level 1, level 2, and UEFA B license. Particularly UEFA B license, I really enjoyed that. That was more about phases of play and real coaching, the tactical side of the game. So I really enjoyed that. Whilst I was at Wigan as well, I did my youth modules. So if you imagine your level 1, level 2, UEFA B, very generic. So it doesn't matter who you're teaching, you're expected to teach in that certain way. Whereas the youth modules were more age-related. And I probably enjoyed them more than I did the other ones, if I'm being completely honest with you. They're a lot more realistic to the teams you're working with.
But these badges, though, take a lot of time, right? Was there a lot of time away from school that you had to revise, or how did you end up with this qualification in the end?
Yeah, tough. The tough qualifications, particularly the UEFA B. A lot of work away, as you say. You have to go and work with teams and log all them sessions and review all them sessions. Lots of other things to do as well about really nailing down your philosophy and what you think about coaching, and then submit that and deliver it to people. And then obviously you do your final sessions, which is like an exam, which is nerve-wracking to say the least. But once you get that qualification, it's a great feeling. It's obviously a European qualification as well, which is great to have on your CV.
So if you just had that UEFA B, what would that have enabled you to do? What stature of clubs could you have gone to?
Yeah, so any academy across the country usually asks for UEFA B. And into Europe as well, it's a recognised qualification. So again, you could go to any academies within that area to coach at the top level, which is your Premier League, Championship. Then you require your pro licence, which is above an A licence, which is a real, again, difficult qualification, but again, more about how do you deal with the media and that sort of thing added onto that qualification as well.
So again, that must take even more work. I mean, I think I saw something where it was about 12 months. Was it about a year where you have to study that course?
Yeah, the UEFA B was 12 months. Yeah, 12 months solid, and lots of time away.
Pro license?
Sorry, no, that's UEFA B. Pro license, yeah, I think it's 12 months too. Yeah.
Would you consider doing all of them? Have you got all of them already?
No, I went up to UEFA B and I stopped there. So what I would love to carry on and do the rest of them, but I got to a point where working in an academy, the UEFA B license was enough. That gave me enough. The A license really is for people who work full-time in football, and probably ahead of where I was at the time. It would be useful now. Obviously, we're working with the England Amputee team. It would be useful to have. So it's something I'll look at in the future, certainly.
This UEFA B got you quite far. You got offered a coaching role at Accrington Stanley. It's a bit of a mouthful. The under-12s over there. So again, now you're working with children again. You've just come back off a nice holiday and you're starting to return back to your normal schedule, if you like. Tell us that time before you decided to move to Wigan. But before you tell us about that Wigan time, talk to us about Accrington.
Yeah, so I was quite lucky. It was a guy who ran the UEFA B, a guy called Phil Hackney. He was one of the assessors. And he was the academy manager at the time at Accrington. So I did my assessment, passed the course, which I was very proud to do. And then the week after, I got a phone call to say, would I be interested in coming taking the under-12s at Accrington, which, brilliant. Again, another opportunity to work with a professional club. So I went over there. Wasn't there very long. I think I was only there 6 months or something like that. But again, learned a lot. Didn't have a massive budget. Accrington facilities weren't particularly great. It was almost had a grassroots feel to it at the time, but I enjoyed it, and I was working with some really good players and really good staff, and just another opportunity for me, really.
Those teams that are lower down the footballing pyramid, League One, League Two, Championship, maybe at times, they need to rely on youth because their financial structure isn't beneficial enough to bring these big names in. Was that what a big focus was at Accrington, where they had to really depend on the youth and able to keep the main club afloat?
Yeah, massive. And you look at a club like Accrington as well, probably what they're feeding off as well is players who've been released at other clubs and then come in and then they try to push them up. So I know Wigan talks about grade A players, grade B players, grade C players. And what they like to do is take a grade B or grade C player and try to push them towards a grade A player. And again, Wigan as well look to take players that were released at Liverpool, Everton, Man United, Man City, and so on and so forth, and try and push them and help them make the grade.
After about 6 months, you decided to leave Accrington for an offer that you couldn't refuse to Wigan. They approached you about the under-14s categories, and you stayed there for 6 years, coaching players like Joe Geldhart, Sam Tickle, these decent players that are now playing in the Premier League. Oh, Leeds. They're not playing in the Premier League. They're playing in the Championship next season. But during this time, you were the head of PE, and you also ran the department. So talk to us about that mist of times, the 6 years at Wigan, and also being head of PE.
Yeah, so literally 6 months at Accrington, that's all I was. And I got a phone call to ask if there was an opportunity at Wigan to take the under-14s, which at the time I couldn't turn down. It was where I lived, so less travelling time. It had a real good reputation of producing players at the time. It was a Premier League club, so that was a big pull for me, and where I enjoyed the majority of my coaching within an academy structure, to be honest. At the college, I was obviously head of PE at the time, and I kind of set up a football academy at the college as well, which was built around BTEC structure. But the players had come in, or the students had come in. Everything we did was based around football. So when we did something on strength and conditioning, they did it on strength and conditioning of a footballer. If we did a unit on analysis, we'd go to Wigan and watch a game, and they'd analyse a player in the first half, a team in the second half. But really, the skills that we're using could be transferred to athletics, netball, basketball, whatever that may be. But we were using football as kind of the driver. And as part of that as well, what we did, I coached them during the week for 4 hours. So they were almost living life as a scholar. So they were doing the training, but juggling their education at the same time. So these were kids that probably were a bit disaffected by education, but brought them back round, and they all succeeded. So the success of the course was through the roof. And the idea long term for me was to take players who didn't quite get a scholarship, feed them into our program at the college, continue to coach them and monitor them, and if they then made the grade, feed them back into the system. Didn't really happen for a number of reasons, but yeah, so that was a nice time in my life, really, because I obviously had the teaching, which I absolutely loved, and I was coaching at Wigan Athletic, which I loved as well, so that was a nice time.
Before we talk about 2015, where you wanted another challenge, you wanted a new challenge to build on something new, what was your proudest moment in the time at Wigan or the time before then? What would you say was something that you can proudly look back on as a big moment for you?
Yeah, I think from a teaching perspective, certainly the Performance and Excellence Academy that was set up, that won lots of awards for how successful it was. That was certainly a proud moment. But in terms of Wigan, I think it was just the amount of players that we got through the system and into the first team system. It's just amazing. And that continues to be that today as well. If you look through the team, obviously Sam Tickle's playing first team now and playing for the England under-21s. You've got Joe Geldhart over at Leeds, who I think signed for £1 million at the time, which he should have gone for more, but I think Wigan were in a bit of turmoil at the time. But yeah, I think the amount of players that we produce is a proud moment for any academy staff.
So in 2015, you wanted a new challenge, and your brother played a big part in this deciding to make a new challenge because he was working with, was it children? He was working at a children's home at the time, and you felt like you wanted to benefit this scheme that you were doing. However, at the time, you had two young children, you were the head of PE, you had a new business, you were coaching, and you had to give something up. So you decided to give up coaching at Wigan Athletic. But tell us that decision process. Why do you want another challenge?
Yeah, it was tough. With teaching, I felt as though I was getting to a point I was making less and less of a difference. With being head of department, I was the one speaking to governors and speaking to the head about results and data and all sorts of stuff like that. And I just felt as though it was less about making a difference within the child's life and more about the paperwork and the data and the statistics and all that sort of stuff. So I was looking for a new challenge professionally. My brother was working in a residential children's home over in Blackpool, and I was looking to invest in a bit of property. So we had a discussion, and he said, well, why don't you invest in property? Then I'll come across and I'll manage the home for you. You can set up a children's home. So it was me and a friend of mine who were looking at that, and we literally spent 2 years researching the whole industry. We felt that there was quite a lot of bad practice within it, and we could come in and we could actually add some real good value to it. Teaching gets a lot wrong, but at the same time, it gets a lot right as well. And we felt as though we could bring everything that was right in teaching into that industry. So we were literally working for 3 years full-time as teachers whilst we were setting up this business. So the first house we set up was in 2016, and I continued to work as a teacher until I think it was 2019, something like that. So that was tough. And obviously, like you say, I had two children as well. So I had to look at what I was doing and thought it can't continue. It's just too much. So the coaching at that time was the obvious one just to kind of put on the back burner whilst everything else was sorted out.
That's a very not random thing to do, but there is sort of a random thing to be able to set up a children's home and really want to make that benefit in a different way into children's lives. And I'm presuming you still have those businesses, right?
Yeah, we've scaled the business now. So we're now nearly 8 years in, and we've got 8 children's homes across the Northwest. So that enabled me to then step away from teaching. And when I stepped away from teaching, obviously that left a little bit of time for me to pick up my coaching again.
And that's what happened in 2009 on the UEFA B course that you completed. You met a man called Andy, who was the England goalkeeper coach of the Amputee team at the time. But before we talk about him, at the time, what was the Amputee team like? Do you remember the funding behind it? Do you remember what they were achieving?
Yeah, so because I was friends with Andy, who was part of that setup, I was obviously friends with him on social media, so he'd post a lot of things, and it just looked so professional. The way they kind of portray themselves on social media, I just thought this is incredible, and I watched that for a number of years with Andy posting, and then he posted saying they were after a coach to come in and coach the next gen group that maybe not quite ready to youngsters to come and eventually have that opportunity. So I applied for the role, and I was successful, and I got that role, and I worked with them players, and it was a difficult one because I came in right in the middle of COVID, so I think it was the November, and I didn't meet any of the players, having worked with them from November all the way through to I think it was about May. I'd worked with them for that long and never met one of them. So everything was online. We did quite a bit of analysis work, and so yeah, that was a strange kind of introduction to amputee football.
A few months ago, I spoke to Thomas, who got a bit frustrated because he said he couldn't leave his box as a goalkeeper, and obviously he likes he wants to be that kind of sweeper keeper, if you like. And obviously, there's different rules that apply to able-bodied football than amputee football. But why was that a route that you're willing to go down? Was it because, I mean, we can kind of make the point where you really wanted to make an impact, and this is another thing that you could have made an impact on?
Yeah, I think whatever level it is, an opportunity to represent your country is too big of an opportunity to turn down. Like I said, I spoke to Andy quite extensively about the setup. I'd seen it firsthand on social media, and I thought this is a challenge. It's something different, and it's something I'd like to be involved in. And I was worried at first. There's a lot of kind of anxiousness about where do I pitch the sessions? Do I dumb it down? Do I simplify things? And the reality is absolutely not. The way I'd coach within an elite academy is exactly the same as how I'd coach within the amputee national setup. They're just so incredible. They're talented, got amazing technical ability. It was just a real eye-opener for me.
Before we go on and carry on the journey that you've endured during your time, just on a quick note, with the England national amputee team that you were obviously coaching with now, you played a game against Everton, I believe it was yesterday. Is that correct?
That's it, yeah.
So do you...
Sunday.
So, because of is there a lack of teams, amputee teams, hence why you have to play against clubs as a nation?
Yeah, massive. That's our biggest challenge. So our biggest challenge is to play amputee teams at that level. We had a big opportunity last month. We went over to Turkey and we played Turkey and Uzbekistan twice as well as part of that trip, which is massive in the lead up to our European Championships. There's times previously where we've gone out to World Cups and European Championships and we haven't had the opportunity to have a game before we go against amputee nations. So the large part of that is funding and cost. It's expensive to bring a team over because you have to put them up. You have to pay for the transfers and all that sort of stuff. And when you're a charity like we are, it's very difficult to do that.
I've got a few questions for you at the end, which is one of the questions is how did you be able to afford this trip to the Euros, which you can explain to us in a moment. Yeah. But do you think, because you're not obviously attached to the Football Association, are you?
No, we're not. We're not under the umbrella of the FA.
Do you think that within the next 10 or 15 years, or even before then, do you think the FA will take you under their belt and maybe be a bit more inclusive? Because that's the whole point of the FA. They make their roles really inclusive, but they're not really having an eye and a say in what you do. And why are they not having a say in what you do?
Yeah, it's the simple answer to the question is yes, I do. I think there's a place for it, and it should be under the umbrella of the FA. So in 2006, it was, and then the FA and the Wisdom decided to get rid of the programme in 2006, and that's when it was kind of continued as a charity from there and gone from strength to strength, to be honest. I mean, anybody who will come to one of our camps will realise quite quickly that it would be no different than what Gareth Southgate's doing with his national team or what Serena Wiedmann's doing with the national team. So it's amazing. The only difference is everybody in and around the programme is a volunteer, which is amazing. We've got doctors, psychologists, strength and conditioning coaches, analysts. It's incredible. Now, the FA wanted the programme back. So before the World Cup in 2002, they spent 12 months shadowing us and came out to the World Cup with us. And they were amazed by our programme. They thought it was tremendous. And in fact, the words they used was, this kind of outweighs anything we've got with our programmes. So all the signs were really good. Now, the FA, and we've got a great relationship with the FA, by the way. We have got a good relationship with them. Now, when it came to the crunch, they're going through a lot of changes with their disability sport and disability football at the moment themselves. So ultimately, what we had the discussion of is it's not right for us. We feel as though we're getting our programme right, and just to come across to you and slip into kind of a structure where you're not sure if it's going to work or not yet probably isn't right for us. So we're still open to talks with them. We're still having lots of conversations with them, and eventually it could be the right time. But just at this moment, it's probably not the right time for them to take us, and it isn't right the time for us to go. And that's where we are with the FA, really.
So in terms of the charity and the network that you have, are you kind of the top guy? Are you the one that's doing all this communications, or is there people higher than you that are obviously hiring you and things like that?
Yeah, we have a committee, and the committee will have them discussions, but I'm part of that committee as well. So I will be part of them conversations moving forward. And what we've got to do is make sure it's right for the lads and the charity. And if we feel at any point it is the right thing, and we'll include the boys in that conversation as well. So we won't make the decision independently, because ultimately it's their programme. But if there comes a time where we feel as though this is right, that's the point where we'll follow that route. So
back to your story then. So you were kind of a talk. You were the first team coach for the men's team under Owen Coley Jr. And with Owen, you travelled to World Cups, the Euros, but then he stepped down after the World Cup in 2022. But before we talk about that World Cup, could you tell us about that first experience that you had to go abroad, where it was, and what happened in that tournament?
Yeah, so we went to Poland. That was my first kind of introduction to the national setup in terms of tournament football, and that was the European Championships in 2021. We went out there, prepared. We played a number of games leading up to that tournament, which was really good, and it was refreshing because we were just off the back of COVID as well. So to play them games in preparation was good. Went out to that tournament, did really well in the group stage. Got through to the quarterfinals, played Spain, and in that quarterfinal we lost on penalties, sadly, to Spain. So a brilliant experience for me. I mean, to stand there for the first time and sing your national anthem as a member of staff was a real proud moment. Brought tears to my eyes at the time. But just to work with these incredible players at a tournament is just like nothing I've ever experienced before, really.
You mentioned COVID, and the following year you did the World Cup in 2022, and the reason was because of COVID. There would have been a usual gap in between. You finished third in the group. So I'm guessing at the time that was a bit of an underachievement with Argentina and America finishing above you.
Yeah, disappointing. So we started the tournament. Bearing in mind as well, we were the youngest team at the tournament. Mm-hmm. So we have a really inexperienced young team at this point. So us going away, we didn't really go away with any expectations of anything. However, we knew we were good enough to win the group. We played the first game against the USA, and we sadly lost that game, and we probably took them too lightly. And that's certainly something we've learned moving forward. That was a bad result for us, really. Won the second game and then lost the third game to Argentina. But with us finishing third, and because we'd won the game as well, we actually went through to the next round of the tournament, which was great.
On a side note, for an amputee player, is their career span the same as an able-bodied footballer?
Yeah, 100%, exactly the same. Yeah.
So in the round of 16, you lost to Angola. And I've been told that Angola do quite well with their programmes in terms of the amputee side of things. You lost 1-0 in extra time. I mean, what was Angola? That must have been a big learning curve for the boys in the round of 16.
Yeah, that was massive. That was when our boys came of age. We kind of badged it up as that's when the Cubs became Lions type of thing. So Angola at the time were the current world champions. Incredible team, really mobile, great technical ability. So we had obviously our game strategy in place, and the boys were absolutely outstanding. Angola went on to compete in the final. Actually, we were just incredible. It was a real pivotal moment in the development of this group, and unfortunately, we just lost literally the last kick of the game in extra time, which was, again, there was tears. There was disappointment, but at the same time, we knew that was a turning point within this group.
So after that tournament, you all came back, and Owen decided to leave post that tournament. Would you have said it's because of the underachievement?
No, definitely not. That's the reason Owen decided to leave is because he took up a role with Queen's Park up in Scotland with the able-bodied boys, working with the first team. So obviously that's an opportunity that he couldn't turn down.
You decided to apply for the England job, and you got the job. I mean, talk me through that process. Do you know how many candidates were against you? Were you one of the only ones?
Yeah, there was 2 or 3, I believe. In the first instance, it was to take it on an interim basis because the talks were currently going on at that point with the FA, whether the programme was to move over. So the idea was I'll come in the interim, and then eventually, if it goes to the FA, I'll interview for the FA, and then we'll move forward from there. So. I got it in the interim, and it was a baptism of fire because we literally had 5 months to prepare for the Nations League, which was interesting. Enjoyed that time. We got to probably around March, April, and decided the FA wasn't the route we were going down, so I got appointed full time in that role, and we went across the Nations League in June. So.
And you obviously prepared for that Nations League tournament. You won against all the odds. You beat Turkey, Poland, and Spain, who are all trophy holders in their own respective rights. And Turkey is a big one. And Thomas was a big advocate for this, where you didn't lose an open play. They didn't lose an open play, since 2014. And you beat them. I believe it may have been 1-0. So talk me through that game, that big preparation in such a deadly group.
Yeah, huge. So it was the Division A. So it was essentially 4 of the best teams in Europe competing for the number 1 spot. We hadn't won a major trophy in over 30 years. So we had Turkey, who were the world and European champions at the time. We played against Poland, who were the AMP Cup champions, and have professional leagues over there, and Spain, who I just talked about there, who knocked us out the World Cup. So, yeah, we were up against it, but we knew the work we'd done from January to the tournament and previous to that, we could go out and give a real good account of ourselves. So, matched up against Turkey in the first game. Boys were absolutely outstanding from start to finish, and we won that game 1-0. We just didn't let them in. Found us really difficult to break down, and we scored a good goal as well. So that was amazing, and that gave us belief, and it gave us a momentum, which was amazing. And the second game was Poland. We went 1-0 down quite early on in the game, but we stuck to our guns, we stuck to our processes, and we come out 2-1 winners after that Poland game. So that took us to the Spanish game. It was actually on exactly the same pitch as they beat us in the quarter-final of the European Championships. So we had some scores to settle, and we won that game 1-0, and were crowned Nations League champions, which was a proud moment.
Obviously, able-bodied men's football is the ideal thing that everyone sees. But then obviously you've got the women's game, and then you've got the amputee game, and then you've got all sorts of other games inside of the beautiful game, if you like. I find this really interesting that countries like Angola, like Poland, who aren't maybe as big in the women's or men's able-bodied game, but in the amputee game, they're so big and it's so reputable. And that's what I love. I love to see that. I mean, as a coach, do you have to go ahead and watch these teams in an even more basis? I mean, these players that are representing Angola, are they playing, I mean, obviously you wouldn't know all of them, but are they playing in Angola or are some of them playing over in Europe? I mean, what's that idea thing for that?
Yeah, mixture really. There's a few playing over in Europe, in particular Turkey. So Turkey have got professional leagues where they'll train every day. So they're all professional players. So you'll get quite a lot of the Angolans, the Ghanaians. They'll go out and play in Turkey. There's quite a lot of video footage for us, so we can access that, and we do quite a lot of analysis work on each team. Like I said before, the infrastructure around the program is incredible. What we've got to get right now is the funding for it. So we're still looking out for somebody who'll come and sponsor the team to the level that we need to be able to continue to compete at that top level. But yeah, you look at the likes of Turkey, you look at the likes of Angola. The funding that they get is incredible. So the Turkey in particular, funded by their government and their governing bodies. So they don't want for anything. Their facilities are incredible. And I think due to the fact that they border with war-torn countries as well, they've got more players to choose from. Sadly, I know that's a sad situation, but they have. And it's an area we need to get better at, and we need to improve at our funding.
We're going to talk about your European preparations, but you've also, just on a side note for your business, you've still got 8 residential homes and you're planning to invest in some more. So now let's talk about the Euros in France. What is that feeling like? Before we go into the depth of it, to go in, is it 5 days today? 5 days from the 28th. You're going to France to represent your country. What's that feeling like?
Amazing. Can't wait. I think before, when we've been away, we've almost had a feeling of I wish there was one more camp, or I wish there was a couple more camps, but I feel as though this time we were probably prepared a month ago. So we've just come off the back of our final training camp, and it was just literally a bit of fine-tuning, looking at set pieces, making sure everybody has full clarity on what their role's going to be. We never look beyond the first game for reasons I talked about with the USA. So everything we've done at this last camp was about Georgia. We know what Georgia do now. We know them inside out. We know every single player. We know how we're going to approach the game. We know who is going to be doing what in terms of personnel. So we're not looking beyond anything other than this first game against Georgia. And our preparations have gone well. Our trip out to Turkey to play against Uzbekistan and Turkey was massive for us. And we're just excited now. We're ready.
You're in a group of trouble. I mean, this could be trouble for some nation. Italy, England, Georgia, and the Netherlands. And the tournament lasts from the 1st to the 8th of June. So it's all within quite a short space of time. So I'm guessing you play a game every day. Is that how it goes? Yeah,
so we'll play the Friday, Saturday and Sunday. That'll be the Group 3 group games. And then we have the Monday off, and then we're into the knockout stages after that. So intense, these tournaments. But we'll take away with us 2 physios, sports science specialists. They'll work with the players and make sure they're in tip-top condition for each one of them games. And hopefully they'll be fully recovered between them games as well.
I think you're going to Evian in France. Is that correct?
Yeah, beautiful place. So the setting for the games is the one that the German national team used back in 2006, I think it was, at the Euros. So we've got all the Swiss Alps to one side and all the French Alps to the other. So yeah, real gorgeous setting.
And I'm presuming all the teams are in one basis, one camp.
Yeah, so we're sharing a hotel with Holland, Scotland, and Poland, and everybody plays at the same venue. So within the venue, you've got the main pitch, which is a show pitch, and then you've got a couple of pitches off to the right-hand side as well. So we're playing on the show pitch for all our 3 games, which is nice.
In the hotel, will there be a bit of rivalry with the other teams?
I'm hoping not. That's a worry, that, Jamie, if I'm being completely honest with you. But yeah, it's they'll be fine. We know a lot of the other teams as well, so that we have good relationships with them.
This is an interesting one for me, and I've always wanted to know. And Thomas obviously told me from his perspective. How do you call players up for the England national team?
So we have a league structure. So during them league games, what I'll do is I'll get down and I'll watch the teams play. And if I feel as though there's a player who's particularly shone and hasn't had a call up before, I'll bring them into the fold, invite them to a camp, and I'll see what they're up to, how they're doing. We try to pick a squad of around 18 players, a training squad, almost like a provisional squad for a tournament. And then what we'll do is we'll whittle that squad down to 14 prior to a tournament, which we've done this time as well.
And you have quite a big batch of players to be able to choose from, right?
Yeah, not as big as I'd like, if I'm being honest. If you look at other kind of disability football sports like blind football, partially sighted football, cerebral palsy, they've got much more players to choose from. And again, this is something we need to get better at to raise the profile of the game. And I'm sure there's amputees and people with limb deficiencies out there that we haven't tapped into yet who don't know about amputee football. So again, that's on the radar to improve as well.
Talk to us about the time then. You went on TV to ask for donations for the tournament, and you managed to raise your target by the time you left the building of the TV studio. Talk to us about why and how you managed to do that.
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. So we actually got in a newspaper in the Mail. It was, in the Mirror. And it was just really talking about our plight and the fact we're going to the Euros and the fact at that time, we didn't have enough money to be able to go and commit to the tournament, which was ridiculous because we were number 1 seeds for the tournament, having won the league. So the Mirror were really interested in doing a full-page spread on us and talking about each and every player and how they became, how they got their amputation or the limb deficiency, each individual story. And off the back of that, we had a phone call from this morning, the programme on the TV, asking if we'd be interested in going in and talking about our kind of plight at the moment, which obviously we took them up on their offer. So we took the full squad into the studios with Ben Shepherd and Kat Deely. We talked about amputee football. We talked about the situation we're in terms of our funding. We had a GoFundMe page at that time. So we were looking to raise, to get us to the tournament, 30 grand, I think it was. I think we were on about 4 or 5 at that point. So went on the telly, had a brilliant time, had a real good experience. By the time we'd gone from the studio back to the train station, which was probably an hour, we were up to about £40,000 because of the viewers on this morning. So it was just absolutely incredible. The reality of it is that gets us to the tournament, but it doesn't secure amputee football for long periods of time. So we're after somebody now to come in as principal sponsor, fall in love with the game as we have, and we know, and really start to kick us on to that next level.
And for those fans who would like to watch the tournament, where would that be able to be watched?
Yeah, so all the games are going to be streamed over social media platforms and YouTube. So if you follow our England Amputee Football Association social media platforms, all the links will be posted on there for the games as well.
And that kind of links in with this question. In the long term for amputee football, what do you see happening in an English perspective, but also a foreign perspective? Do you see because obviously Thomas played in a few FA Cup finals. He said that was streamed on TNT Sports. Do you see that happening more where TNT in 10 years could go out to these major tournaments and stream and more pro clubs on the horizon?
I do. I think that's the next phase. I think it's a game that people would love. So if you enjoy watching the able-bodied football, it's a game you could watch and enjoy as well. Amputee football. It's a fast game. It's a brutal game. Now, I know if you've not seen it before, people might think it'd be a bit slow and going through the motions. It's absolutely not that. We get broken crutches all the time. Skill level is absolutely incredible. We have some amazing goals. Obviously, the goal of the year from last year was an amputee player, Marcel Oleski, won the Pushkas Award. So the more we can bang the drum about amputee football, the more we can get people to watch it. I just feel as though we can really start to build something special.
And what will this camp be like? I mean, there's bigger expectations now? Obviously, you're the holders of the Nations League, great feeling. And you could quickly talk to us about that feeling of being the holders and the higher expectations. Will the camp be feeling a bit nervous, or will they be feeling really optimistic and excited for what's ahead?
Obviously, I spent time with the group last weekend, and there is a feeling of excitement. What we said before, because we are such a young team, we've always lacked a bit of experience. But what I said to the players this weekend, you've now experienced things. You've experienced being underprepared for tournaments. You've experienced losing at tournaments. You've experienced winning at tournaments. So we can't use the excuse that we're young and inexperienced anymore. So we've got the evidence now. We've got the tools to go and achieve something really special in June.
Obviously, I wish you the best for that tournament. So if you won the tournament, if you came home with that trophy, what would be next for you? Would you want to continue building with England, or would you want to maybe step away, give someone else the chance and move on to another team or another club?
Yeah, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing at the moment. I've never really looked beyond what I do now, and I've never set myself goals, and that probably sounds quite strange, but what I've done with my life really all the way through is I've done as best as I possibly can within wherever I am. And that's opened the door for something else. And I've done exactly the same there, and that's opened the door for something else. So I don't really plan ahead and look what next. I just give everything to what I'm doing now, and I'm enjoying it. They're a great staff group that I've got at the moment, a brilliant set of players. And this is only a start for them, really. They're going to be achieving some amazing things over the next few years, and it'd be great to be a part of that.
Scott, it's been over an hour talking to you about everything in your journey, and now this build up to Euro 2024. That's days away. So I wish you all the best. I wish the team the best, and I wish you all the best for the future. And thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it. Thank you.